When it comes to how the Adeptus Custodes army rules should be handled for Warhammer 40k, there are certainly many schools of thought. But I'm of the opinion they shouldn't exist at all. What's up to the 22.2 thousand Grimdark subscribers of my channel? With all the brewing I've been doing as of late, I think it makes sense to turn my attention to the Custodes, specifically the Talons of the Emperor detachment. Now, when GW dropped the 10th edition Custodes Codex, I heard how bad it was, but I didn't look into it. I was just too preoccupied with other projects. Plus, the Femstodes controversy did sap what little enthusiasm I did have. But after examining the Talons of the Emperor detachment, oh boy, I can confirm it's a big stinker. The mechanical shortcomings aside, it just feels so uninspired, so phoned in. It's boring.
It's boring. Boring. I'm giving you a boring word.
Which is a real shame considering that a Talons of the Emperor detachment should be the most interesting version of the Adeptus Custodes. This video will be part Talons of the Emperor rules critique and review, which will be followed by providing some fixes, well in this case, an overhaul, which better serves those ends. The resulting What the Fact PDF has been made available for download for those interested in giving it a whirl, because, well, it's us the players who make the game. So here we go. Let's fix the Talons of the Emperor. I've never been overly fond of the Custodes army rule taking the form of karate stances. I would much prefer something that goes beyond flexing their martial prowess. But at least now each unit can choose the stance they use, which makes more sense than compared to how this rule was at launch, with all units being forced to adopt the same karate stance army-wide, like some sort of synchronized cult of karate. For the Talons of the Emperor detachment, GW provides the Detachment Rule, Revered Companions. It grants 2 auras. The first provides Anathema Psychana units, which I will henceforth refer to as Sisters of Silence units, a 6-inch aura, giving all Adeptus Custodes units within it a 5-up Feel No Pain against mortal wounds and psychic attacks. And the second provides Custodes units with a 6-inch aura, which gives all Sisters of Silence units a +1 to hit. These buffs are mild at best. Before critiquing the efficacy, it's worth acknowledging that these perks are soured by the comparative norm, as the previous index detachment simply granted your units a 4-up Feel No Pain versus mortal wounds. That aside, this Helping Hand aura direction is a neat idea, but it has an inbuilt mechanical problem. Because even if the Sisters of Silence units gave Custodes units some busted ability, the Sisters of Silence aren't durable, and so to maintain any buff they provide you would want to take a surplus of Sisters of Silence. But the Custodes are the very essence of Elite, and so they eat up a ton of points. And the Sisters of Silence units themselves lack the impact you would expect from some of the most elite warriors in the Imperium. You're left with a rule that does more for the Sisters than the Custodians, one which also gives you less and asks for more. The enhancements are uninspired, a defensive once per turn blank of damage which can be teased out by your opponent, an enhancement to boost the aura range conferred by the Detachment Rule, a +1 to wound and melee for the bearer, and a defensive -1 to hit for attacks targeting the bearer's unit within 12 inches. Now, these are adequate, but they fail to spark joy. Only one of them has anything to do with teamwork between the Sisters of Silence and the Custodes, and even then it's just a range booster. Regarding the stratagems, honestly I don't hate the selection. You have a fallback without penalty, a coordinated shooting booster, a melee booster, an out-of-phase reactive move, a shooting targeting restrictor, and a defense booster, though it's a little lackluster because you already have a Feel No Pain against psychic and mortal wounds coming from the Detachment Rule. That being said, there is a hook here I quite like, as many of these stratagems can provide perks to 2 of your units instead of only 1, if one of those units is a Sisters of Silence unit, which is very thematic, but it is in effect asking you to fill out half of your army with Sisters of Silence units, further feeding that issue I raised when discussing the Detachment Rule. And with all that laid out, I think some fixes are in order. The intent here is to create a detachment that exemplifies the following themes. Like with the official Talons of the Emperor detachment, obviously from a unit's point of view we want to flex the Sisters of Silence. As for the themes, there's really just one, Teamwork. This detachment's mechanical offerings should really encourage the Null Maidens and Custodes working in concert. And to serve those themes, I present to you a very novel, a very sophisticated concept. The Detachment Rule is Trusted Companions. It's wordy, but necessary to facilitate the structural changes required. It details that you're able to add Prosecutor, Vigilator, or Witch-Seeker models to Custodian Guard, Sagittarium Custodian, or Custodian Warden units. The joined unit's points cost should be raised appropriately, and you can't join more than 5 of the above models to such a unit. Those models bring with them their stat line, war gear, abilities, and keywords from their datasheet, and that unit gains the Talons of the Emperor keyword. And lastly, you can add 1 Sisters of Silence character as a leader to such a unit, even if a leader is already attached. Which is really here because there ought to be rules in place to facilitate Valerian and Alea taking to the field in a Talons of the Emperor detachment. Now this structural change brings with it immediate value. For one, it serves the teamwork theme, by allowing the Null Maidens and Custodes to work side by side, which is far superior to the official detachment wanting them to be segregated but nearby. For 2, finally Sisters of Silence can leverage the army rule, a feat even Grots and Chaos Cultists can do. And for 3, being part of a mixed unit allows all models to benefit from their abilities. Here's a little matrix of the abilities available to these joinable models to help perceive the value. Some immediate examples are Prosecutors bringing the utility of precision and dev wounds versus Psychers to the ranged weapons of Custodian Guard, while they bring the potency to shoot twice once per battle. Or how about adding Vigilators to a unit of Wardens, further bolstering their martial defense? And the mixed squad formation carries the innate utility of damage allocation. While the Custodes will tank most conventional damage, should a mortal wound or psychic attack come their way, it may be time for the Daughters of the Abyss to shoulder the burden. And this is all before any leaders are added. Suddenly, Alea's ability to give a unit she leads fights first is far more enticing, as is a Knight Centura's +2 to move and advance rolls and charge rolls, especially if a Blade Champion is in the mix, who provides a once per battle advance and charge. It should be plainly clear that this detachment rule allows you to make some very potent and very points-heavy units, but these are the Talons of the Emperor, and being able to create mixed squads literally allows the Custodes and the Sisters of Silence to make each other stronger through their cooperation. Plus, there is a secondary rule which serves to create some push and pull. Now I'll be frank. This is a rule I feel strongly about, and really, in my perfect world, this would probably be the Custodes army rule, but it's been included here because I want to share it. Dominion allows your Talons of the Emperor units to split in your command phase, harkening back to the Unleash the Lion stratagem from the previous 2 codices, the exclusion of which from the 10th edition codex is honestly pitiful. But the reason why Dominion is so good is that while it does shore up the weaknesses of the low unit count of a Talons of the Emperor army, it also encourages you to diffuse the power of your hyper-potent units. This creates some interesting tactical decisions for the player, while also creating a unique hook for the faction that is fitting for the most elite force in the Imperium. I think it's much better than Custodes Karates. And the last detachment rule is really a restriction: no outside allies. A Talons of the Emperor detachment should be about flexing the cooperation of the Custodes and the Sisters of Silence. We don't need Baldy over here coming in to muddy that theme. And having this restriction better justifies the strong utility of splitting your units, since you're restricted from allying in cheap action monkeys. With the meat out of the way, we're on to enhancements. Since all the official enhancements are uninspired, here's a complete redo. Lethal Unity is for Blade Champions or Shield Captains. While the bearer has the Talons of the Emperor keyword, they can select a Sisters of Silence model in their unit, granting the bearer and the selected Sisters of Silence model the ability to score critical hits on 5+ instead of 6s. Because teamwork makes the dream work. Godstrike Gateway gives models in the bearer's unit the Deep Strike keyword, which will allow a Talons of the Emperor unit to arrive via Deep Strike. And if the bearer is a captain, you can target his unit with the Rapid Ingress stratagem for free. The Praetorian Crest is an homage to the Praetorian Plate, another awesome mechanic from the previous publication, which is again absent from the 10th edition codex. It's like the rules writers don't even want Custodes to have interesting mechanics at all. This enhancement does in effect what the old relic did, but it isn't Terminator locked, and it brings with it a secondary layer of utility, as it grants the unique exception to rip a leader from their bodyguard unit as they shunt to arrive at the aid of another. I think it's a rather fitting choice for a cooperation-focused detachment. And lastly, we have Nullification, an enhancement only for Knight Centauras. It grants a Knight Centaura the ability to reduce enemy OC while they are within her engagement range. It's a simple but potent affordance that will yield big impact for primary play, so maybe that Knight Centaura should stick with a group of Wardens. On the stratagem front, for a rule set focused on teamwork which encourages you to split units to trade potency for utility, the double targeting strat paradigm of the official detachment makes sense. Though here the restricting factor is any one unit or two Talons of the Emperor units. They are as follows. Realm Claimer is a standard objective sticking strat, certainly useful for a detachment with a low unit count. Hunt as one is pulled from the official detachment, allowing units to fall back and still act. Appropriate for an army full of adaptable and highly capable individuals. And Emperor's Aegis is a defensive strat granting a 4-up feel no pain against psychic attacks, damage caused by devastating wounds, and mortal wounds. The three other stratagems each require either Witchseeker, Prosecutor, or Vigilator models to be in the Talons of the Emperor units in order to double dip them, which encourages peppering in different Sisters of Silence models across your varying Talons of the Emperor units. Quarry Seeker keys off of Witchseekers, allowing your units to pile in and consolidate 6 inches instead of 3, which is a big get for potent warriors like the Custodes. Especially since in 10th edition you can fight whatever is in engagement range, not just the charge target. Prosecution Volley and Vigilant Unmaking key off of Prosecutors and Vigilators respectively, and function similarly. Affecting units can only target one enemy unit, but those attacking units gain +1 to wound, and if the target enemy unit is below half strength, they improve the AP of their attacks by 1 as well. Now normally, I don't like these kill more type of stratagems, as in most instances, you want offensive booster stratagems to help as much as possible, not just when something is half dead. But because of the dual activation potential at play, these types of stratagems really exemplify that teamwork theme, as one unit can set up another for that secondary perk, which is an interesting case of rules interactions in this particular context. And that's it, my take on a Talons of the Emperor style detachment. One which actually enables the Adeptus Custodes and Sisters of Silence to cooperate, becoming greater than the sum of their parts. Regarding the Dominion ability, as I mentioned earlier, this could be the army rule, but I didn't want to pitch this as a complete overhaul or supplement. However, if Dominion is too potent when layered with Martial Katas, we could consider replacing Martial Katas with an army rule variant of Dominion, which would allow all units to once per battle split, where this detachment rule instead gives Talons of the Emperor units the affordance to split in each of your command phases should they choose. With regards to enhancement costs, there is a bit to be determined here, but with that in mind, if any Talons of the Emperor players would like to give this homebrew detachment a whirl, you can find a link to this What the Fack PDF in the description of this video. Feedback is always welcome, as the goal with these sorts of things is to make them as tasteful as possible. Well, that's a wrap on this one. If you enjoyed this video, there are buttons for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to Julius Maximus, as well as my other generous patrons and channel members. Lately I've been doing hobby live streams, and currently I'm in the midst of a Warp Spider Phoenix Lord arc, so if chill hobby jams are your thing, join in and let's get those projects done. Anyways, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch ya in the next one.